Welcome to the Accelerating Operational Performance podcast. I'm Greg Schenkel, President of Unique Training and Development and Frontline Leadership Systems. And of course, our mission here at the podcast is to help you accelerate some of the initiatives that you're trying to make happen in your organization, help you in your professional development and career progression, and just generally, of course, provide you some interesting resources from our guests. And our guest today, I'm really pleased to say that I've done work with this guest before at his company, and I think we're in for a treat. I'd like to introduce Vince Vlaminck. He is a dynamic organizational leader, a certified Six Sigma black belt, and certified human resources leader with over 30 plus years of experience from the front line to strategic planning processes, working in leading manufacturing companies, including Eaton, Tenneco, Honeywell, and since 2005, the Kautex division of Textron. Since 2011, Vince has been the Director of Employee Health and Safety at Kautex globally, leading the function across the globe and based out of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Kautex is a top 100 global automotive supplier and operates over 30 plants in 13 countries in close proximity to its customers, along with 9 engineering, research, and development locations around the world. So glad you're able to join us today, Vince.
Very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So Vince, one of the things that people are always interested in when we're interviewing someone is to know a little bit about your journey earlier on in your career. So we know now you're head of this global effort in EHS. Can you give us just a quick synopsis of the kinds of positions that you've worked on in your journey up to where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. I started my career in HR, but back in those days, you had both environment, health, and safety and HR as part of your responsibility. So my boss, Bob Hewson, a great guy at Eaton, Yale, and Chatham, Ontario, sent me to be part of the Industrial Accident Prevention Association, the IAPA, which used to be an association of employers. And so I was doing both EHS and HR. And then as I progressed through various roles of HR, EHS became part of the HR department. And then I think maybe 15 years ago, and maybe even longer, companies started to break off EHS into its own silo, if you will, and that they worked closely with HR, but they were separate. And so I kind of worked in both, and then I took on a role with the most recent company doing global training and development from about 2007 to 2011, doing the succession planning, Six Sigma, Toyota production system, those things worldwide. And then the company asked me to lead up the EHS function. And I've been doing that now since 2011 in the current role. And actually, that's the longest kind of stint I've had in my career in one role. I've been with Kautex almost 20 years now. So time really flies. Yeah,
it does, doesn't it? And that just that makes me feel older because knowing that we did work together probably more than 15 years ago. Now, one of the questions I have for you is, in your career from when you first entered the workforce to today, along the way, I don't know if you'd agree with this, I felt even in the early days of being in this business and working at General Motors in my very earliest days of my career, that for a while you don't really have a lot of confidence. You might have enthusiasm, you might have a fake it till you make it sort of approach at first, but then at some point in your career, something goes well enough where you kind of have this sense of, I got this, like I've come into my own to some degree. And I'm just wondering, can you think of an early success where it really convinced you that, wow, I do have some value to bring to the organization?
Well, like you said, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back in the whole journey throughout your career. I mean, early on in my development, they stuck me out on the shop floor as a supervisor at Eaton Yale in the afternoon shift, and so working hand in hand with the guys out on making parts and them sending you to the tool crib looking for something that didn't exist, and kind of going through those kind of one-on-one things. Really kind of accelerated my learning curve, and I think part of what I see is the world goes from black and white when you first started in your career, and then you start to see shades of gray, and then those kind of shades of gray and those kind of almost a pragmatic approach, and kind of trying to understand what is it we're trying to achieve, and what is the win-win that we can achieve, especially in HR or in EHS between employees and management. Trying to get to those things were some of the kind of the aha moments or the breakthroughs that we had early in my development and career,
Yeah.
and trying to break down those barriers. Those were kind of interesting steps along the way, I think.
Oh, for sure. I heard a saying recently, and
Yeah,
it was that well, it's male dominated in the saying, but let's see if I can change it. But
yeah,
it says young men know the rules, old men know the exceptions. But let's say when you're younger, you're just trying to follow the rules and fit in, and then as
yeah,
you get, I think what you're saying is, you get more seasoned, you just see the nuances and things that aren't always cut and dry, and so.
yeah,
I think that's true even in health and safety, because there are lots of rules and legislation around it, but
yeah.
at its core, it's about looking after people and putting people's safety first. And I'm just wondering whether you've noticed an evolution within health and safety since you've been in that field for so long. Like, when does it flip from being sort of a task to being just the way a company thinks about its people?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think early on in my in my most current role, we would have some lockout tagout violations around the company, and I'd be meeting with the senior operating team, and it's real simple. We train them in lockout tagout. If they didn't follow the rules, then they need to be punished or leave the company or find somewhere else where they can follow the rules. And you find out very quickly it's not that simple. People are only breaking the rules because they want to do a good job for the company, for the most part. They're not breaking the rules to kind of promote themselves, or doing it they think it's the right thing to do in order
Right.
to kind of achieve what they need to do. And so probably there's something in terms of some jam up that's happening, or some setup, or usually the violation is a result of the machinery is not working as designed, right? So, but one of the things you have to do is kind of get to the root of, okay, well, why are we doing what we're doing, right? And why is the employee having to kind of unjam this on a regular basis? That's the root cause, right? So yes, did they violate the rules? Yes, did they know they were violating the rules? Probably. But if we really kind of get to the bottom of it all, it's because there was something going wrong with the machinery, or there was some part of the process where if I lock it out, this part of the machine's going to de-energize, and then I can't change it over because it's drifted away from its home, and it has no air pressure.
Right.
I'm getting
Yeah.
into technical
No,
stuff,
that's okay.
but ultimately finding the engineering solutions, and then some of the learnings from Toyota, that management's role is really to lessen the burden of the operator. That has really stuck with me, and that's really been something I've tried to promote as I go around the company. Especially among our young engineers. That's what we're here for. We're here to lessen the burden on the operator. So let's go talk to them. Let's find out what's ailing them from an ergonomic or an equipment OEE perspective, and let's try and fix that. Because if we do that, then we'll make friends, and they'll feel better about the job they're doing, and productivity will follow. So
Awesome. Awesome. So I remember leading a session on safety leadership for one of our clients,
yeah,
at a large consumer products company. And we often will ask, like, what's an example of something that you changed that you thought you'd have a lot of resistance to? Maybe you even thought it wouldn't work or it would be a negative. And they used the example of guarding on machines. And they said, when we went to make it, add more guarding to the machines, people thought there's no way this process is going to run efficiently anymore. Our numbers are going to go down. And time again, what they said is no, actually it was a safer way of doing it, and didn't really impede the machine's performance. I also like what you said around, wherever possible, our job is to support the frontline team in being able to add value, deliver value through the work that they do, and remove frustrations. It's not in the company's interest to have these waste elements there. I'd like, because of your history with being a Six Sigma black belt and obviously your company's commitment to continuous improvement, I wondered, and you mentioned the Toyota production system, which a lot of companies adopt. You've probably seen examples where people like have a shiny tool within the Toyota production system or lean toolkit, and they love that one, but it's hard to get traction. I just wondered, what have you witnessed and seen about really getting people to adopt these practices in the workplace?
I would say that the core to operational excellence in my mind that's very easy for any business or any industry probably would be 6S, TPM, standardized work, and what I talked about earlier in terms of the role of management to support the worker. Right. So if we think about those as our base, 6S, you can do that in any workplace, right? Yeah. All of the most highly productive workplaces that we have are the best at 6S. TPM, okay, so you're being proactive in terms of your maintenance processes, and then standardized work. And standardized work from a perspective of the operator and how do we do things on a regular basis, repeatable, not making it boring, but at the same time understanding repetition allows for a higher quality. And then ultimately, as we talked about, management getting out there, understanding what needs to be done when the end on gets pulled or things are on a regular basis getting backed up, why, and then problem solving, not in a blaming manner, but in a problem solving manner, being part of the team that kind of gets things up and running. That's where you're going to get what I like to call critical mass. Right? Yeah. And so as you build a critical mass, and I say in the safety front, Greg, that we build on two pillars. So one is kind of risk reduction, okay, and then that builds the culture that we want. And the culture is about the Toyota production system. And then for a while we were fighting quality, so we aligned. And safety, quality, culture is exact same thing. And TPM, 6S, standardized work, they're the basis for quality, basis for safety, right? So we've done a lot of things whereby we involve employees in our risk reduction efforts, right? So we do workshops. We'll have a certain topic in terms of maybe mold change or in terms of lockout, tagout, or logistics safety. And to the extent that you get the guys and ladies involved in the process, get their input, then they have ownership in the actual maintaining of it. Right? And so that builds the culture. So those two pillars of risk reduction, building the the quality safety culture, those are kind of the two pillars. And together, you build a critical mass for the culture where you want to go and where you want to take the organization.
Awesome. So I'm curious because we also want to support companies who have leader standard work, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, and maybe this is a shifting trend, and I think you mentioned how things are shifting even in how to embrace safety and how to even link some of these tools together to achieve common outcomes between the tools.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious of is there's a lot of soft skills training, right? Just how to interact with people, motivate, communicate. And then there's the operational excellence piece, which is typically the lean, continuous improvement, 6S. By the way, you've used the term 6S, so I'm guessing you've added an S to the typical 5S. Safety. Thank you for doing that. Yes. And I think that's a good add for our audience.
Sure.
So when you look at those things, I'm just wondering, how do they fit together? In other words, I could just use leader standard work as a checklist in a way of the things I'm supposed to focus on, but I'm supposed to do it in a way that's engaging and involving and so forth. How have you guys basically embraced this idea of marrying the two together?
Yeah, I think it's through the cadence of kind of daily Gemba walks. It's through using the tools in terms of standardized work, the 6S, the TPM. We're fortunate to have Toyota as one of our customers. They set up a very good cadence. They run, if they're going to run 400 cars a week, they're going to run 400 cars a day. They're going to, that's what they're going to pull, and it's on a regular basis. It becomes predictable, and you could set up your organization that way. When I first came to the organization I'm with today at Caltex Windsor, now I'm global, but I mean, they were working 7 days a week for 5 or 6 years before I got there. and people were getting tired, and it was like, they didn't know how to break out of that cycle, and you kind of get used to that kind of being on that treadmill, if you will, of and relying upon that 7 days a week. But somehow you got to kind of create the vision and get back to the 5 days a week, and then have repeatable, that balance, right? But the balance comes from having a predictable cadence, right?
Yeah.
The predictable cadence in terms of the planning 1 week ahead, and then executing, and then taking stock of where you're at, and then go ahead. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. I never really give enough credit to operating in a stable environment, because if it's chaotic, which would be the opposite of it, it causes a lot of unease in a lot of people, and how they respond to that chaoticness, can cause ill will. It could cause the culture to go negative. But having some stability means we generally, there's always the chance for a hiccup, but we generally know how things are supposed to run and will run on a daily basis. It takes away that element of surprise, which can cause nastier reactions, I guess, when things are off base. One of the areas
companies have become very good at firefighting, right? Yes. It becomes a skill, right? We're great in a crisis. We're great in fire. Yeah. Okay, it's a good skill to have, and it's a good resource to have. If like when our factory in Windsor got hit by a tornado, I mean, those skills come to the forefront, right? But have to do that week in, week out.
You don't want to rely on that.
No, and you want to have that for your cushion, or you want to have that for your overage. The customer is going to pull more in this month and that month at the same time that we normally go on heavy vacation schedule. So how are we going to adapt? How are we going to work? So you have that. You can get through anything in a kind of a temporary 6 to 9 month blip, but if it starts running into 18 to 24 months, it's like, and now with the next generation, I mean, they value work life so much. It's like
they're not going to want to work overtime all the time, right?
They want to. So how do I make sure I have my remote day built into my schedule, right?
So, which actually brings me to something else, which is to say that because many leaders go, all people care about is money, and certainly in inflationary times, people pay attention more to their pay than ever before. But one of the things that surprises people is people don't want to work overtime anymore. They value their time off. They don't want to work 6 or 7 days a week. I still remember my uncle, who worked at GM at the time when I was there, and before me and after me even, he would work every hour of overtime. He did well financially, but it became a priority, almost overwhelming, and that doesn't happen in today's generation. So I want to go into the generational differences in terms of motivation and some of the things that you've seen, and how Cowtex is responding to that. What is the way to adapt and get basically to both get the most out of younger workers, but also get them more engaged so they stick around while you invest in their performance and development?
Yeah, they're extremely talented. So the people that are hitting, and it's probably like, the sports we see, like the NHL players or hockey players, are more talented than the generation before. I don't think it's any different in the workplace. The kids that are coming out, and the skills that they have computer-wise, if I compare that to where I was when I started decades ago, I mean, it's light years above where I was, right? And in terms of so some of these technical skills, some of these computer skills, where we need to kind of assist them is getting them, to understand where the rubber hits the road and how they can add value, and then so it's really engaging them in projects, and then kind of creating what is their part of the project, and then being able to kind of have, I think where organizations probably are struggling the most today is having enough mentoring capacity to kind of keep on track, right? But I see some things, especially in remote work, where I see some, the neighbors' kids are on this or that work term, and they're not doing anything all day because the people that are mentoring them or are supposed to be coaching them obviously don't have the bandwidth to do it. So then they're just left to kind of, and it's not good for either the young person trying to develop or the organization, because it's kind of a lost resource. So it's really finding the right balance of projects and putting people and you can stretch the young professionals today, the young workers today, and same with shop floor employees, asking them to do more and be more engaged, and not just kind of make parts, but also be part of the problem-solving teams and get into workshops like I talked about, or having those input processes in your workplace. I think those are all key. So it's engagement, collaboration, knowing that my work has an impact and makes a difference, right? Those are
Awesome.
things that people want most, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there is a slight variation. If you offer me 50% more money, then I'm going to have to go. But a lot of times, people won't be lured away for 20% more if the workplace is still engaging and fostering their development.
Agreed. And what I love about that, Vince, is not once did you make any negative comment about the next generation. It's all about tapping into people's talents. And, the things that people used to put up with in the workplace, they shouldn't have had to put up with them either. They did because we didn't
Yeah.
know any better. And now we
Yeah.
know better, so there's no reason to have a work environment that causes a lot of negativity and stress. And you're right, these young folks are coming in with a lot of talents, just different talents.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good to know. I'm curious, Vince, in your career, was there ever a good learning moment that you don't mind sharing where a project maybe didn't, at least initially, turn out the way that either you had hoped or others had hoped, but something you learned from being involved in that initiative?
I'm sure there's multiples. Let's think about one that I can share. Didn't go the way we wanted it.
Or at least initially it didn't go. Maybe it came back. Maybe it came back after, but you still learned a valuable lesson around either who needed to be involved or something to pay attention to that maybe you didn't think was a big deal before you kind of went through that.
Yeah, I would say that some of the learnings as I've kind of gotten to the director level would be more around, it's great to give projects to people, and it's great to kind of say that, okay, I'm going to develop them by giving them leadership of X, Y, Z. I think my kind of shortcomings in that would be that sometimes I underestimate how much I still have to coach a little bit,
Yeah.
and I like to think I vary my leadership style according to the needs of the people that are reporting to me, but sometimes you got to look beyond that.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of say, they're not going to be successful unless I tell them X, Y, Z along the critical path to get from here to there.
Right.
And helping them kind of get through some early wins in their project is probably a lot more effective for them and for the organization, and rather than just kind of letting them throw them in the water and letting them learn that way, right? So
Yeah.
I think where I've kind of messed up a few times would be where I just let somebody kind of, because I thought they were ready, and I thought it was, maybe the best approach. I think I've learned that just put somebody in the water. Yeah, sometimes it works, and sometimes they have some good outcomes from it, but sometimes it's more pain than is required.
Hey, very good point. And just to add a little bit of context behind what you just said, it's a good lesson for any leaders listening or watching to the podcast. It's situational leadership. One of the aspects is, to what degree is the person already proficient in whatever the task is? If they're not, that's when they need even more direction, support, and encouragement. Once they're proficient, then you actually dial it back, and that's when it's appropriate to withdraw direction and just go into coaching and support mode. But like you said, if you're used to either just like, oh, you'll figure it out, or the other way people go, Vince, is they go micromanaging, right? And then they're overly directive way longer than they need to be. It's really tough as a leader to be conscious of, does this person need more support right now, or do they need less support right now? Do they need more direction or less direction? So very good point that you brought up there. I just wondered if you gave any advice to, as we get close to the end of the podcast here.
Sure.
I'm just curious what advice you'd give to a younger person who aspires maybe at some point to eventually get promoted into either supervisor, manager, director, executive roles, but maybe they're earlier on their career path. What advice would you give them to help them along that path?
Yeah, for sure, especially early where you have the ability to be mobile, to take different assignments, to be willing to travel. I think you have to take advantage of those opportunities because the pressure will come sooner than later for you to kind of have roots in one area with family, and as that part of your life kind of takes on more. So early in your career, try and get those experiences. But at the same time, you have to kind of wait for this. We always talked about the cycles, right? So you gotta kind of put something in place, then you gotta live with the results for a year, and so it's a balance between taking on different roles and then also kind of putting things in place and then understanding what worked and what didn't work, right? Did it live in the DNA of the organization beyond me going and doing the project and then leaving? And you hope everything does, but that's not always the case. So sometimes you got to kind of stick with it and then understand the tweaks that are required to make something successful long term as part of what you left behind in that or that role or that organization.
Yeah. You raise a good point, and it's like viewing leadership as a relay race, and you're a steward of the department or the project while you're involved in it. But how is it going to be after you're not involved in it anymore? And can you create a system where it does live on so that when the executives look and say, all right, who could we move into a new opportunity? Well, this person has created the backfilling that they needed in their role to allow us to pull them out and put them into something else. So I think it's great for you to suggest that kind of balancing between it. So Vince, I just wanted to say thanks so much for being on the podcast. Again, if people want to learn more about Kautex and the work that it does in the global automotive business, you can visit kautex.com. Vince happens to be a global EHS leader, but if you want the English version, of course, add EN to the end of the website. If you want to connect with Vince, of course, you can look him up on LinkedIn. He's pretty active there. Vince Vlaminck is our guest today. So, Vince, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your insights.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it very much.
All right. So again, thank you for taking the time to listen to or watch the Accelerating Operational Performance podcast. Remember, Unique Training and Development and Frontline Leadership Systems USA, our focus is really helping leaders at different levels, frontline leaders, middle management, and also plant managers, kind of set the tone for high performance and high engagement. So if we can be of any assistance to you, please reach out to us on our website at uniquedevelopment.com.